in Mandalika, but sadly this weekend, as we mentioned a few moments ago, he ploughs a lone furrow for Hiroshi Oyama's Idemitsu Honda Team Asia squad this weekend. With the new season, although it starts late, it's come too early for poor old Ayagura, recovering from a very serious wrist injury suffered in a motocross training accident, damage to the very troublesome scaphoid bone, which can be slow to recover. Not a lot of blood supply in that region, but we're also told he's got some very, very serious ligament damage in his left wrist as well. So no given that we'll see Ayagura potentially until the Austin, the Circuit of the Americas race in Austin in mid-April. Now then, changes to the lineup at the American racing team. Delighted to say that Sean Dillon Kelly, he stays put. Of course, Cam Beaubier, well, he's gone back home to continue his career. Into American racing comes the highly rated young Scot, Rory Skinner. I'm delighted to say, right on cue, we can hear from American racing team boss John Hopkins about his men.
Yes, John, two young riders this year, less experienced than Cam, who's gone back to America. Tell us your impressions of pre-season about your two riders.
Yeah, it was a really tough but amazing preseason, postseason at the end of last year. All winter long, both of our riders actually came out to Southern California, obviously with the weather being so good. We were riding pretty much 6 days a week for a month and a half straight. Supermoto, flat track, motocross, ovales, everything we could get our hands on. So, you know, the boys are ready. Then on top of that, we were also doing a lot of gym, fitness, trainer, working with the W training facility there in Southern California. So, yeah, the guys are as motivated and ready to ride as much as possible. And it's going to be, I mean, yeah, we're under no illusion it's going to be difficult, but I think they started off pretty strongly over here in the last 5 days at the opening tests. You know, both riders were consistently up in the top 20, you know, even making it up into the top 15 from time to time, but yeah, it's going to be difficult. Obviously, we don't have, you know, one veteran, one rookie like a lot of the other teams kind of do. We've got, you know, although Sean did have a full season last year, you know, from where he started off, he's still almost like a rookie this year. But I think having, you know, Rory at the level that he's been, coming from British Superbike and the championships that he's raced in over the last 4 to 5 years, his level's automatically quite high. So I believe Rory will actually push Sean, and I think they'll push each other as they work themselves up the grid. It's kind of a new dynamic, like I said, having two kind of younger, you know, more rookie-style riders, but I think it could play off in our favor, and they can push each other and work up quite quickly through the beginning of this season.
The program you had for winter, I saw you post a few things, and I saw you were training hard, you know. Yeah. It seems really professional. Do you work, this is a genuine question I'm curious about, do you work on the mental side as well, preparation for coming back into a race season, or more going on your advice?
No, exactly. On the mental preparation is just as high, you know, just as high as anything. Obviously, mental side of it, you know, in road racing, you know, it's 80% mental, you know, 20%, you know, more of the physical side. But, you know, you have to be in absolute top physical condition physically to have that mental side of it at the top of its game. But no, we prepared heavily on the mental side of it. We've actually got a sports psychologist on the team that's working with us full time this year. She came over from England. She actually came out for the training camp that our boys were riding and worked with them individually on the mental side of it. And then obviously myself working with them in terms of the confidence, showing up here, you know, knowing and confident in their ability, you know.
And their preparation.
Yeah, exactly. And having that full 100% preparation throughout the off-season, they're showing up here as confident as possible, knowing that, you know, there's no disadvantages in that regard. You know, the only thing they're lacking right now is just experience and time with the bike, which is only going to build.
The rider lineup has changed slightly. From the outside, I haven't been to the test. Can you tell us anything changed inside the team?
Yeah, I mean, we brought in a few people we added a couple people. Obviously, there's the social media side of stuff, which we brought in and added a few people, but we've actually changed crew chiefs now. So for this year, we have a new crew chief for Sean. SDK, Sean Dillon Kelly's has Julian from Mark BDS, so he was a crew chief over at Mark BDS, worked with Sam Lowe's and that side for the last couple years. He did actually work with this team quite a few years back. But crew chief side. Then we also brought in a few new mechanics. We have Matt. He was with Suzuki MotoGP, so he was actually with Suzuki MotoGP when I was racing with them. Obviously, and
he's as old as us.
Yeah, exactly. The old timers, and same obviously Stuart Shenton. My old crew chief at Suzuki is now working with Rory, so he's working with Rory. We have Mats from Suzuki MotoGP, a few of those guys, and we actually have a new mechanic as well on our side. So there's quite a few changes within the team and the structure itself, but the changes we have made is amazing. The team's working as optimal as I've ever seen it, so it should be a good season for us. I think we're like I said, it's going to be difficult, obviously, having the two younger style riders, but I think it could work in our favor, and we could surprise a few people this year.
Thanks for your time, old friends, and I wish you the best of luck.
Cheers, Simon. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to John Hopkins. Yeah, all the best to the American racing team. It's a exciting new young lineup. Great to see another Brit get a chance in the World Championship. 3 Brits in Moto2 this year, of course, now with Rory Skinner joining the experienced duo of Sam Lowe's and Jake Dixon. Rap on the knuckles coming for this man, Aaron Kinnett, because he's way late, isn't he? I'm sure some of his rivals will see the funny side of it, some of them won't, but better late than never. There he is, just dishing out all the apologies, plonks himself in the seat, and we are now finally ready after a short delay. Now Aaron Kinnett has arrived to let the official photo commence for our 2023 Moto2 World Championship lineup. Safe to say, missing a couple of big names, including Ethan Guevara and Ayagura, both of them sadly missing from this opening Grand Prix with injuries.
Well, Aaron Kinnett surely has got to be looking at this season and thinking, I've got to take a race victory eventually. This is his 4th season in Moto2. He's gone very close to winning on countless occasions. He crashed from the lead 3 times last season, one of which was here, although I think we can give him a pass given the little rain shower, the localised shower that we had down at the first couple of corners, which of 11 riders went down. Kinnett was the first of them, but in total last year he lost 108 points due to crashes, which of course if you give him a chunk of those back he could quite easily have been a World Championship contender. He's 23 years of age now, Aaron Kinnett, so this is the time for him to finally make that final step up. But there are so many riders who could well feature as far as the World Championship is concerned this season. There were 7 first-time winners in the Moto2 World Championship last season, and they are all back this year. Aaron Kinnett, of course, will be looking to add his name to that list in 2023.
Yeah, the solitary big-name departure from last year's Moto2 grid. Well, he's the world champion, Augusto Fernandez, of course, now plying his trade in MotoGP over the Gas Tech 3 team. We'll see Augusto with the class of 2023 shortly in MotoGP. But one name that just constantly crops up when you talk about the championship mix, the championship picture in Moto2. At this stage last year, when he was a rookie, not even turned a wheel in anger in Moto2. A lot of people felt like he could be a championship challenger last season. That didn't quite materialise, but without any question, no doubting whatsoever the prospects of a young Pedro Acosta in this year's Moto2 World Championship. The bookies make him a red-hot pre-season favourite, not just because he was the quickest man in the Jerez test, he was the quickest man here by a long way in the 3-day session we had preceding this opening Grand Prix. And the Red Bull KTM rider, with the experience from last year, with a great team around him, you just get the feeling, Lewis, that he is going to be clearly the man to beat this year.
His long run pace, more than anything, was particularly frightening last weekend here in Portimao and in the 2-day private test at Jerez. He was setting the kind of lap times on a consistent basis that many of his rivals couldn't touch even once. So there is no question that Pedro Acosta is the pre-season championship favourite. He says he's taken a step forward in every single area going into his 2nd Moto2 2 season at the circuit, of course, where he clinched his Moto3 crown around 18 months ago when he won the Algarve Grand Prix of 2021. New teammate for him this season in the form of Albert Arenas, himself, of course, a former Moto3 world champion. But yeah, Pedro Acosta is certainly going to take some stopping this season. He has got such an air of self-belief and confidence about him. And of course, a number 37, which Pedro Acosta returns to after his teammate Augusto Fernandez ran it last season. A 37 on a Red Bull KTM IO Moto2 bike, winning the World Championship. It worked last season. There's every indication that Pedro Acosta could see lightning strike twice for the IO squad this year.
There is a top crop of Spanish talent in this year's Moto2 World Championship, led by Yafil Acosta. Canet, you know, he's going to be playing a big part in the championship, but we can't discount the likes of 2 young men who had excellent 2022 seasons. Alonso Lopez being one of them, of course, back for the Speed Up Boscoscura project with Fermin Aldeguer. How many times were we talking about those two last year in glowing terms? Well, they are back for more in 2023. Alonso Lopez finished 8th in the World Championship last year, less than 10 points behind Celestino Vietti in the final reckoning. The guy didn't even turn up on that Boscoscura machine until the French Grand Prix in Le Mans. There was all that talk, wasn't there, about the controversy, Luca Boscoscura dispensing of the services Romano Fenati. Everybody felt at that stage it was very, very harsh. Boy, did Alonso Lopez prove him absolutely bang on the money. Second at Silverstone, a phenomenal victory from the front row Mazzano, another victory in Phillip Island where we saw the famous ace up the sleeve celebration, another rostrum in Malaysia. There were podiums as well in Motegi. Stunning season. Do not discount Alonso Lopez. He's going to be a serious championship contender this year as well, and he finished last year with a pole in Valencia, but then somewhat rather lost his head in the race, didn't he, Lewis, which was a big surprise.
It did. He was so desperate to try and win the Rookie of the Year crown up against Pedro Acosta that it seemed to get to his head, and the red mist came down for Lopez. If you average out the points per race of every rider in Moto2 last season, it would have put Alonso Lopez 3rd overall behind the 2 leading championship contenders, Augusto Fernandez and Ai Ogura. The only negative, I suppose you could say, for Alonso Lopez coming into this first Grand Prix is he didn't have a particularly good Portimao test a week ago because he was a little bit under the weather. Said he was throwing up a lot over the course of the weekend, so he didn't exactly have the ideal lead-in to this first Grand Prix weekend. Can he deal with the added pressure and expectation that is on his shoulders this season? He was very much a surprise package last season, kind of riding with nothing to lose. He's certainly got a lot of eyes on him this season, and his teammate Fermin Aldeguer, who still has the opportunity to become the youngest Moto2 rider ever to take a victory or stand on the podium. That record held at the moment by Pedro Acosta after his victory in Mugello last season. Aldeguer could take that record if he triumphs in the early stages of this season, and he had a very, very good test here 1 week ago. He was the nearest challenger to Pedro Acosta.
Yeah, Fermin Aldeguer, he'll be looking forward to going back to Argentina next weekend. Of course, it was there in round 3 of last season where he became the youngest rider in Grand Prix history to take a pole position. Didn't quite go his way, of course, famously tangled with Celestino Vietti in the Grand Prix, so a bit of a score to settle with Termas next week. I'm delighted to say back again in 2023 is the Netherlands teenager Zonta van den Gorberg, and also delighted to say that his father Jurgen, a pretty decent racer himself back in the day, well, more than a decent racer himself back in the day. He's down on the grid with Simon.
He is, and while the riders are on the grid getting their photo opportunity, I thought I'd ask you, Jürgen, to give the listeners a bit of an insight on what it's like for a dad, even if as experienced as you, to bring the youngest rider in last year as a rookie, and he didn't do bad at all. Give us your thoughts.
Well, indeed, he was the youngest, you know, and he will be for a long time, since the age is coming up to 18 years old now in Moto3 already. So it was a very hard and tough job last year, you know. He did some really nice races, didn't get rewarded by points. I would say, like, we were very close a few times. Even here in this race he was 10th and then got involved in a big crash in the first corner. Well, it was probably more against him last year than with him, everything. So, but he learned a lot about this, and his body wasn't ready. I would say, like, for a 16-year-old, it was on the limit. We knew what we were doing. He was still in the growth period and everything, and you know, and then during the year we see him getting stronger and stronger. Must say, over the winter now we gained another few kilograms. You would say, okay, that's maybe for the total weight not bad, not good, but it's just an average, you know. So now we seen him riding now, and he makes some big steps. And together with him and Furman, they are the youngest one out there. So yeah, it's still exciting to watch as a dad.
Looking at his experience before he came into World Championship, and that's brutal move even with a lot of experience, I think honestly that he did better than I and most people expected. You know, his speed in general, watching all the sessions. What about you? Did you know he would do that well, or you expected more, or you agree with me?
Now, let's say from the first race on in Qatar, we thought like, if you just hold on the last guy, you've done an amazing job already. You probably stand on the last start grid. He did. He wasn't even last, but he was like second last or something. And in the race, he even passed the last two people in the last lap. So he did an amazing job. On that moment, we knew he's gonna make it. You know, if you're in the first race and you're like 15 seconds behind the last one, yeah, it's gonna be a hard season. But he already got the feeling and everything, and then step by step he did an amazing job in the beginning of the year by even qualifying here in the Q1 and also Argentina Q1. So it was really good actually. We're going to see more of him.
Jürgen, thanks for your time. We better get back to the boys, all the riders that come off the grid.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Jürgen van der Gorberg then. We just look at Darren Binder and Somkhat Chantra there as the Moto2 photo shoot then completed for 2023. We know that Idemitsu on the team age would love to be having that shot with Ayagura involved as well. In the press release earlier on from the team, there was no clear-cut date for an Agura return. He said he felt like he wasn't nowhere near ready enough to be here in Portimao this weekend. And when you think that the paddock is just going straight down to South America on Monday, Sunday night and Monday for round 2 in Argentina, that casts big doubt on whether Agura will actually be fit as well before the Termas round. Now, I'm delighted to say a young man who had a phenomenal season last year, from 14th to 4th in the World Championship, and he ended in some style. Then he wins in Buriram and Malaysia and a podium in Valencia to take that 4th in the standings. Always a delight to hear from the Tiger himself, Tony Arbolino, with Simon.
Tony, you're always exciting to watch, but last year was extra exciting. How are you feeling going into this year?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, as you say, that we were enjoying a lot last year, last part of the year. I mean, also was an amazing tour in Asia, amazing racing and weekend in Valencia. So the last race, so we are really happy. And then also in this point, compared to last year in the winter test, we were a lot faster this year. So that's a huge important that means that we keep the same level of when we finish. So that's the most important thing. So really happy about that. Feel confident and feel appreciate that the crew are working a lot. So feel with a lot of energy in my mind and in my body. So can't wait to show some good level this year. Yeah.
Great stuff, Tony, as always. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. Have a nice one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Yeah, I've got to say, Tony Arbolino, not just a dark horse contender for the championship this year, because he really did step up after a fairly difficult rookie season in Moto2 with the Dynavite Intact team. He moved to Elfmark VDS, and that's where he really did flourish. A stunning end to the season, as we mentioned. 3 podiums in the last 4, including those wins in Thailand and Malaysia. That would have given him so much belief, so much confidence going into the winter. He couldn't wait. He was chomping at the bit to get back on the bike in Jerez recently. He's had a rock solid couple of tests as well, and Tony Arbolino will definitely be in the mix for the championship. I'm delighted to say a guy who we've seen with a beaming smile on his face already, and we haven't even started the Grand Prix action, have we, in 2023. Down in the pit lane with Simon is Somkhat Chantra.
He's just putting his helmet away, giving it to his helper. And Somkhat, I came to see you because everyone enjoys hearing from you. Tell us how your pre-season testing is going, or it has gone so far.
Yeah, I to come back again in the 2023, and also we have the test in Portimao also already, and now we in the last weekend, and I'm so excited to start the race in this week, and yeah, I will try to do my best in the last week.
Do you feel any different this year compared to last year? Like more experience, obviously, but what does anything feel different?
For me, I feel like different because also we have something also test, and also we try to do the best setting in the test. And our bike is like improve a lot, and also more experience, and also this year is start on 5 years to me, and I feel very very good to start the race.
Great stuff. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Somkiat Chantra. What a great guy. What a great character. He'll be happy coming into this first Grand Prix to have found some form in Portimao. He was fourth at the test here a few days ago. I'm sorry about this, Somkiat, but I have to remind you, unfortunately, in your previous 4 races here, you have not scored a single point. None. So that's a record he'll be looking to set straight here on Sunday afternoon.
There is Celestino Vietti. Reminder, he's got a double long lap penalty coming into this weekend's Grand Prix, so certainly not starting the season on the right foot, but he'll be looking to pick things up as he goes along. That is the Gresini squad for this season. The QJ Motor Gresini Racing Squad. Philip Salat, who started his Moto2 career last year with a brilliant 4th on the grid in Qatar, and he's partnered for 2023 by Jeremy Alcoba, formerly a Gresini rider in Moto3, and after a year away with the Intact GP squad, he's back in Gresini colours once again. 3rd
in the World Championship last year on 200 points. Still, though, chasing that elusive first victory in Moto2. Will 2023 be his year? Well, let's find out. Simon is down on the grid with this man, Aaron Canet.
I am. Aaron, I'm going to ask you a really straight question. Look, I know how fast you are. You know, I've seen your talent. And last year, you didn't achieve what I thought you would, and what I believed you can, you know. Do you feel different going into this year? Do you believe you can do something extra?
For sure. Finally, we worked during this preseason on my bad points of the last year, and that's so important. My mentality now is completely changed. I'm really focused on my objective, and we are working all the days on Andorra, on my home, for do it, and we will see how is the season. I know I have a big level, but Acosta, Alonso, and other riders have level. But you know, I'm a fighter, and I will fight for it.
Great stuff. Best of luck, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Aaron Canet. He is a fighter. He showed that, didn't he, right here in Portimao last year. Let's not forget in the Moto2 race, that short, sharp rain burst that fell at turn 2 dumped 9 riders on the floor, including Canet, who was the race leader at the time. And who could forget as well, he came back to Jerez a week later after he had surgery on a fractured wrist and stuck it on the podium. One of the rides of 2022, wasn't it, in Jerez last year. Shortly after that very, very dramatic and chaotic Portimao Moto2 race here last year, which was eventually won, of course, a restart, a 7-lap dash by American Joe Roberts.
And Joe Roberts, who was suffering from a little bit of illness last weekend here at the Portimao test, had a fever, so he's not exactly going to the season in the best of shape, but he's one of the many, many winners. There are so many Grand Prix winners and bright talents in this Moto2 class. I'm struggling to remember a Moto2 season that has been so stacked with riding talent coming from all directions. As I mentioned earlier on, we've got the reigning Moto2 European champion, the reigning Moto3 world champion once he's back from injury, of course. Ethan Kabara will be back with us. We've got Moto2 race winners. We've got MotoGP experience in the form of Darren Binder, a former World Superbike star in the form of Kota Nizane. It has every ingredient for a thrilling 2023 Moto2 World Championship.
Yeah, every single class has all the ingredients in place, doesn't it, for what should be a thriller in our longest season in World Championship history. And as you can now see, we are starting to get set for the official photo shoot in MotoGP. The bikes and the riders will be gathering on the grid very, very shortly as we continue the countdown to MotoGP in 2023. And of course, this season, it's a game we have on Saturday afternoons. Saturdays are never going to be the same again, are they? Because at 3 p.m, a local time, at all 21 Grand Prix, we will have the addition, all the drama, all the tension, all the intrigue from the sprint showdown. Half race distance, half points awarded to the top 9 riders. The maximum points for the race winner, 12 points. So it's going to be a fascinating insight, or fascinating to see how the whole programme unfolds. We have to remind you as well, of course, qualifying. There's a new format here this weekend, Lewis, which will run throughout the entire season. It will be the same grid positions for both the sprint on Saturday and for the full-length feature race on Sunday. But I know you're always abreast of everything that goes on in MotoGP, Lewis. So before this photo shoot goes on, maybe just a quick rundown of all the ins and outs of the new MotoGP sprint.
The face of a Grand Prix weekend has changed completely. Fridays, in many respects, are similar, if not identical, to what they were last year. Friday morning, we will have practice 1. It will be the third of the 3 classes out on track, as it will be throughout the season. The order of the practice sessions will run Moto3, Moto2 and MotoGP. The first session, as always, will be followed by practice 2 in the afternoon. That's when it does start to change. Practice 2 will be extended an hour long on a Friday afternoon in 2023, and it is there that the top 10 positions will be locked in for qualifying 2 on Saturday morning. So if you have a poor Friday this year, you are certainly in trouble when you wake up on Saturday morning. No last-ditch efforts in practice 3 now to try and rescue a place in qualifying 2. On Friday afternoon, we will know the 10 riders that will automatically move on to qualifying 2. On Saturday morning, we will have the free practice session. It's a session you perhaps knew as free practice 4 last year. It's effectively serving that purpose. A 30-minute free practice session on Saturday morning, untimed for qualifying, followed by Q1 and Q2. The qualifying format itself unchanged from last season. Qualifying 1 will involve all the riders from 11th backwards in combined Friday practice, with the top 2 moving on to form a 12-rider qualifying 2. 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, MotoGP sprint. It will be half the race distance of the Grand Prix on the Sunday, or half distance less a lap if we have an odd number of laps. So a 25-lap race on Sunday means a 12-lap sprint on Saturday afternoon. Top 9 riders score points, 12 for the winner, 9 for second place, and then 7 down to 1 for the riders third down into 9th place. And the Sunday Grand Prix unchanged, 2 p.m. local time on the Sunday afternoon for the main event of the weekend, where the point system is unchanged from previous years. So in total, 37 points potentially to be won on a single Grand Prix weekend, and a grand total of 777 points to be played for across 21 Grand Prix weekends this year.
Yeah, our calendar expanding to 21 races, as Lewis just touched upon. New adventures coming our way. July the 9th, we're due at the Sokol International Racetrack in Kazakhstan. September the 24th, we're hoping to be at the Bud International Circuit in India to kick off what will be a very frenetic conclusion to this season. The sort of first half of the season, we kind of meander our way through quite gently. I think there's about 11 races in the first 5 months, and then the last 10 come in the space of 2.5-3 months. Jorge Martin, we just saw there, his number 89 Prima Pramac Ducati being wheeled to the grid for the traditional shot of all the machinery. There are a lot of people who fancy Jorge Martin to be top dog in not just this weekend's MotoGP sprint here in Portimao, but maybe to be the man to watch throughout all of our 21 scheduled sprints. No great surprise, is it? Because his one-lap pace, his ability to really get the hammer down when he's on new tyres with a light fuel load. Well, Martin showed at the end of last season he's a specialist in that area. The last 3 pole positions of 2022 in Phillip Island, in Sepang and Valencia, all went the way of the former Moto3 world champion.
Raw speed has never been the problem, has it, for Jorge Martin? He's perhaps the fastest rider in the world on a single flat-out qualifying lap, which will certainly pay dividends for him if he can continue that into 2023, given that, as we mentioned, the grid for the sprint and the Grand Prix race on the Sunday will be identical, subject to any relevant grid penalties that might be introduced through the weekend itself. Jorge Martin says he's a much more mature rider now in 2023, and he felt he was super strong in the Portimao test, so strong that he didn't feel the need to go for a time attack. He feels he has the speed, and he feels he has the potential now to challenge for regular race victories. The Ducati package itself looked to be the class of the field throughout pre-season testing, which means that Jorge Martin surely will be eyeing the podium on both occasions this weekend.
And there was very much a changing of the guard in the MotoGP World Championship last year, with Ducati winning their first MotoGP World title since Casey Stoner back in 2007. Of course, that distinction went the way of Pecco Bagnaia. Delighted to say we'll see the number one on a MotoGP machine for the first time since 2012. But the changing of the guard came from the European manufacturers, in particular the Italian manufacturers. The dominance of Ducati last season, the superb emergence from the doldrums of the factory Aprilia team, it really did put, in many respects, Yamaha and Honda, the Japanese superpowers, very much in the shadow. Starting this season, you feel very much on the back foot. Maybe not so much Yamaha, because Fabio Quartararo did find some vital late speed in the test here a few days ago. He was concerned about his one-lap pace in Malaysia. But Honda, clearly, they are in a bit of a hole right now. Their top man at the test last weekend was actually one of the newcomers, Joan Mir, in 13th place. It's a bit hard to read exactly where the owner of this motorcycle was, Marc Marquez, because he didn't really go for an all-out time attack. Is there more to come from Marc Marquez? But clearly, Lewis, coming into 2023, I can't believe I'm saying this after they were winless last season. Honda have got it all on to avoid that record again this year.
They really have. Marc Marquez only came within 4 seconds of a dry weather race win once last year. That was when he came within 1/10 of a second of winning the Australian Grand Prix, eventually won by Alex Rins. In 5 out of the 9 dry Grand Prix that Marc Marquez finished, of course he missed a chunk of the mid-season, he was over 10 seconds adrift of the race winner. So it's not a small gap that Honda are trying to bridge, it is a chasm between themselves and Ducati in particular. And after pre-season testing, Marc Marquez says we can't even think about the podium or victory. 5th to 10th is what I expect our level to be at the opening Grand Prix weekend of this season. It's been such a turbulent pre-season for Honda that we're even hearing reports that they might even be lending a hand to Kalex to even design their chassis going forward. Keep an eye out on Stefan Bradl when we see him wildcarding at the Spanish Grand Prix later on in the season, because that's surely the ultimate ignominy for Honda if they feel the need to perhaps outsource the design of their very chassis to a third party. But that tells you the depth of the hole that they're in. They were solidly the last of our 6 manufacturers last season. As we come into 2023, victories seem a long way in the distance for them.
Well, there you go then. For the first time since 2012, ladies and gentlemen, we have a number 1 plate in the MotoGP World Championship. And it's a deserved one in the hands of Pecco Bagnaia. 7 wins and 10 podiums. He won the title 4 months ago in that title decider, didn't he, in Valencia, against this man, Fabio Quartararo. Now then, there's an exciting new journey coming up for RNF Aprilia this season. Having moved from Yamaha's independent team, they've switched over to Aprilia. Shows how good Aprilia were last year. The first time in history the Nawali factory will have an independent team. I'm delighted to say from the new look with the new look RNF Aprilia team, it's their team manager Wilco Zeelenberg.
It is Wilco. I was watching closely from the outside in pre-season testing, in your garage, but in the end, I could notice that Raul, aggressive little rider out on track, real talent, exciting stuff. I think he's going to be surprise a few people at a couple of races this year. And then your much more experienced rider, Miguel Oliveira. So can you tell us from the inside how pre-season testing went, in your opinion?
Well, actually, we are very happy. Basically, Miguel showed a very good pace, and Raul improved every test, basically. And compared to what he did last year, he is where we want him to be at the moment. But of course, he's still not a rookie, but he's clearly a fast rider. He needs to learn all these things about this Aprilia, but he was very close to all the other 3 Aprilias, which says enough.
So Razlan said something interesting to me during the test, that it felt to him like going back to 2019, meaning having a crazy talented young rookie, which was Fabio back, now it's Raul, and then a more experienced was Franco Morbidelli, now Miguel. Your opinion on that? Your take?
Well, yes, on one side it's true, but on the other side we are not in 2019 anymore. At that moment of the championship it was a complete different story. Now we have 15 riders who can win a race. At that stage, it was not like that. And of course, we are in the same boat, basically, with one experienced and a little bit less experienced rider. But result-wise, what we did, of course, in 19 and 20, you cannot expect at this moment because the championship is completely different.
Okay, and machines, how do you feel about the Aprilia?
The boys are very happy with the bike. Of course, they have followed the bike last year, the whole year, with them on the KTM and them on the Aprilia. And now they feel like, oh, we are in control, we feel happy, and we can race with these bikes and can ride the bike on the limit. And that's what it is all about.
Great to hear. Thank you, Wilco.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks to Wilco Zielenberg. Of course, it is the Crypto Data R&F MotoGP team now, running a pair of last year's Aprilia RSGPs, which weren't bad, were they, up until the flyaways in the hands of Aleix Espargaro and Maverick Vinales last year. So they're on the RSGP from 2022. Good to see the smile back on the face of Raul Fernandez, who had an instantly forgettable 2022 over at KTM. And a lot of people, a lot of experts inside this paddock have ticked off Miguel Oliveira as a potential title dark horse. Of course, we know what a class rider he is. He won his 2 Grand Prix in his farewell to KTM last year in the rain conditions, unforgettably in both Mandalika and in Sepang. But Oliveira sort of playing down expectation. I think he's been bombarded with people saying, well, Miguel, surely on a proven race winning package like the Aprilia, you can come in and repeat what you did in 2020. But he's just trying to sort of douse those flames a little bit. He's very happy with the Aprilia, but says he's still got a long, long way to go. Straight line braking is an area where he feels that there's still improvement to come, the Portuguese rider. But Oliveira and Raul Fernandez, there are high hopes that they're going to be having some big results this year in that new Crypto Data Aprilia squad.
Straight line braking was a common complaint from last year's 2022 Aprilia factory riders, of course, riding that motorcycle that is now in the pit box of Miguel Oliveira and Raul Fernandez. Oliveira said he felt good on the bike and it suited his riding style pretty much straight away. But I think if you're being serious with Miguel Oliveira this weekend, as much as the Portuguese fans who will be flooding through the turnstiles here this weekend to support their home favourite would love to see him win again, just as he did here 2.5 years ago, Miguel Oliveira really, I think, will be measuring himself against the factory Aprilia riders of Vinales and Aleix Espargaro on the 2023 RSGP. If Oliveira can match or beat them, I think he's doing a sensational job on that bike. He is one of many, many riders on this grid who feels he has top 5 pace here this weekend, and I think you have to include his teammate Raul Fernandez in that, who says he's happy and he's enjoying himself for the first time since 2021, which perhaps says more about his Tech 3 KTM adventure and how happy he is at Aprilia. But good to see the smile back on Raul Fernandez's face.
Yeah, the drone is up, getting some exclusive pictures of this action, and we're certainly up for an exciting and fascinating 2023 MotoGP World Championship, aren't we? New races, new riders, new teams. It's all pointed towards this season being the best we've ever had. And of course, this great championship started back in 1949. The addition of the Saturday Sprint, one of the biggest revamps, the most radical revamps to the format. It is going to bring a new dynamic, a new dimension to the championship. I'm sure fans that are live here in the grandstands, you watching at home as well, it's going to be edge of the seat action right from Saturday afternoon here. 4 races over the weekend, and that's not counting, of course, the support classes. The FIA Moto E World Cup now has World Championship status. Now then, Fabio Quartararo put up such a strong fight, didn't he, to retain the World Championship last year after the German Grand Prix in the Sachsenring, which was coincidentally the last time Fabio Quartararo not only won, but the last time he actually led a Grand Prix. At that stage, we thought, well, it's game, set, and match, because Pecco Bagnaia crashed, dumped the Italian 91 points behind Quartararo. And there followed, what was instigated was the greatest comeback in Grand Prix racing history. Fabio Quartararo in the last 10 Grand Prix lost 108 points to Pecco Bagnaia. A dramatic turnaround, one that not a lot of people in the paddock saw coming. Ducati and Bagnaia were certainly happy it did, and that's the reason why the target clearly on Bagnaia's back now. He has decided to run that prestigious #1 plate.
As you say, it was the greatest comeback in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history. Some were terming it as a bit of a choke on the part of Fabio Quartararo. I don't think that's necessarily fair, particularly with the expanding of the calendar nowadays. You're going to see bigger points margins get closed down just because there are more and more opportunities now to score points through a Grand Prix season. As mentioned, 777 7 of them could potentially be scored by a rider this season. And Fabio Quartararo will feel he might be able to take a bigger share of those points now than he did around about 10 days ago when he first travelled out here to the Algarve for the final pre-season test. They looked in trouble, did the Monster Energy Yamaha squad. He described their one-lap pace as a disaster at Sepang. They were way off the pace, a second off the pace, and he said that the bike felt pretty good on a time attack, but the stopwatch just simply didn't agree with it, found himself a long way off the pace. But they made a crucial step on the final day here on the Sunday of the Portimao test a couple of weeks ago. They went back to the 2022 Aero on their bike, along with the new 2023 engine, which does appear to have given Fabio Quartararo the boost in top-end speed that he was hoping for. They're not likely to be blown away now on the straights by bikes such as this one, the number 23 factory Ducati of Enea Bastianini. So Fabio Quartararo feels he's much more in the game than he was when he first travelled to Portimao, but whether he can ultimately beat the factory Ducatis, including that number 1 of Pecco Bagnaia, well, I guess Saturday and Sunday will give us the answer.
Yeah, I think there's some motorcycles being wheeled down for this photo shoot that aren't required. This is going to be one motorcycle from each team that will compete for the longest season in Grand Prix history. 11 teams, 22 riders. Of course, sadly, we have lost Suzuki. Their decision to withdraw from the MotoGP World Championship for 2023. Pretty unfathomable, really. Still trying to work that one out, particularly when you saw Alex Rins win 2 of the last 3 races. The Tech 3 team, well, they got a rebrand and a new revamp. The bright red number 44 there on the end of the grid shot. Gas Factory Racing Tech 3 is now Hervé Poncheral's squad. Of course, Espargaro and Moto2 world champion Augusto Fernandez will race in that team, of course. And there's a changeover from Yamaha's independent team for Razlan Razli's RNF team. They will now run the Aprilias, as we have mentioned.
A star-studded 2023 MotoGP field. I believe it's the first time ever that a season has started with every single rider on the MotoGP grid having boasted a Grand Prix victory. Aleix Espargaro, of course, adding his name to that list last year with that memorable first victory at the Tomás Rio Hondo circuit in Argentina. Race winners literally everywhere you look, including at the Gas Factory Racing Tech 3 squad with Pol Espargaro and our sole rookie, Augusto Fernandez. Let's get the word from the very top of Tech 3 with Hervé Poncheral with Simon.
He is. Hervé, I had to pounce on you as you walked down to go to the photo shoot. I'd really like you to tell the listeners how pre-season testing has gone for you.
To be honest, it's gone pretty well. Valencia was a real positive test. Paul was so happy to come back on the bike he knew and on his bike, I would say. Augusto also did a good rookie first day. Sepang was even better. The feeling from Paul and Augusto was really, really good. And the problem is the third and last test before the start of the season on the circuit where the first race will happen in Portimao was a bit more difficult, to be honest. We've been not really struggling because when you are just a second to the fastest lap, you are not nowhere, but we didn't get the feeling we had in Sepang, and that was a bit of a worry. Same feeling from the 4 riders. But the good news is there have been a lot of scratching heads in Austria in between the test and this week. Hopefully they have some ideas. I don't know if they will work. We have to wait for tomorrow to see. But yeah, we are happy. We are positive. We got 2 riders that are really happy to be here, that decided to come here. So this is something that is very exciting. It's going to be a long season, and I think a group that will work and that will be able to have more up and down is a group that is working as a group, if you see what I mean. And positive vibes in the Gas Red team.
Hervé, before I let you go, can I tell you my thoughts watching testing, and you tell me if I'm somewhere near the ballpark? I was super impressed with what the Austrian manufacturer, I won't say KTM or Gasco. Yeah, okay. I was impressed with what they brought. You know, their aero looked fantastic. The riders, from what I see, all chose it. That new aero. There's at least 3-4 chassis that I saw. The engine sounds different. I mean, it's very impressive amount of work, and it looks like those things were liked by the riders because they're on the bikes, but it didn't make the step forward that I pictured and I imagined, and it feels to me that it's just a bit more work to figure out how this puzzle goes together, and we're going to see that jump forward. That's what I expect. Or am I off?
No, you're not off. You're never off, Simon. You have a great vision, my friend. No. There is, as you said, we have a lot of incredible engineers. We have a really strong group. The commitment from the Pirelli Mobility, management is unbelievable. So we got all the ingredients, But if you give me the good ingredients and you give the good ingredients to a top chef, you're gonna eat his plate better than mine, because it's gonna be crap, to be honest. But no, we got to unlock something, and I agree with your analysis. I think the potential of our bike is a lot better than with what we've been seeing and showing on track here in Portimao. Wait for tomorrow. Fortunately, we find some solutions, but we have 21 weeks to show that we have unlocked something, and 42 starts. So everything is possible, even though we are a bit not where we were hoping to be in Portimao. We're going to be in front in Argentina.
Thanks for your time, Hervé.
Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Always great to hear the dulcet tones of Hervé Poncharal. I've got to say, the Gas Factory Racing Tech 3 team, they're pretty easy to spot this year because they've got their new bright red uniform. So there you go then, ladies and gentlemen. The fastest motorcycles in the world, with the fastest riders, the elite riders, plonked on top of them for this 2023 MotoGP World Championship. The bike taking centre stage, as you'd expect, is the bike in the hands of the world champion Pecco Bagnaia. First world championship for Ducati rider title, that is, in 15 years, since 2007. He was the first Italian to capture the Premier Class crown since his manager and mentor Valentino Rossi in 2009. Only 6 Italians in history had gone before Bagnaia and lifted the Premier Class title. Some legendary names, of course, the likes of Giacomo Agostini and Valentino Rossi. But he has got that target on his back now with that #1 plate. You've got to deliver. But I've got to say, Lewis, coming into a new season, given how strong Bagnaia was last year, given what we've seen in winter testing from both him and Ducati, let's not forget here at the test, Pecco Bagnaia fired in the first and only sub-138 lap we've ever seen. It's all pointing towards Bagnaia being one of the hottest favourites we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, he's been carrying such an air of calm and confidence throughout the winter. Stark contrast to this time last year, where Ducati were kind of throwing all sorts of different parts at a perceived problem, and Pecco Bagnaia didn't really feel as if he was going into the season particularly comfortable with his package. Of course, Ducati eventually got their house in order, and once they did, Pecco Bagnaia was so difficult to beat last season. Looking to try and make fewer mistakes this season, of course. It was those mistakes that put him in that position where he had to pull out one of the biggest and best comebacks in Grand Prix motorcycle racing history from 91 points adrift. Davide Tardozzi saying that he must settle for places that aren't necessarily #1. Whether he'll be in that mindset this weekend or not, I'm not entirely sure, because he certainly is the favourite for victory this weekend. He did, as pretty much every rider did a couple of weeks ago, a sprint simulation in anticipation of the new format coming on Saturday afternoon, and there was no question that Bagnaia's was the strongest of the lot.
Yeah, there's been some ominous words as well coming out of the Ducati camp and the Bagnaia camp, saying that he feels already, after just 6 days of winter testing on that GP23, it's already at the level, if not a little bit better, than the rounded, developed GP22 package he finished last year on in Valencia. So Ducati have made improvements, they have made progress, and Pecco Bagnaia, he says now's not the time to relax, not the time to take the foot off the gas. He wants to be a multiple world champion in MotoGP, to be considered one of the true greats. That's the next mission for him. And you do just get this sense as well, Lewis, that just how strong Ducati were. Okay, yeah, they've got strength in depth. They've got 8 bikes in the grid, but they've got 8 really good riders that, you just get a sense that we might just be seeing or ushering in a new period of domination from a manufacturer and a rider.
Certainly, and you just need to start with the teammate to Pecco Bagnaia, of course. He's got a new teammate for this season. He's been working very well with Jack Miller over a number of years across their spells at Pramac and, of course, the factory Ducati team. But Enea Bastianini, third in the World Championship last season for the Gresini Racing squad on a year-old Ducati. Bastianini is now in factory Ducati Red, joining Pecco Bagnaia, who he enjoyed some thrilling head-to-head tussles with last season, including at Le Mans and at Aragon, two that Bastianini got the better of, and in San Marino, the race at Misano that went right the way down to the final few metres, and of course the tension-racked showdown in Malaysia that, again, Pecco Bagnaia got the better of. Bastianini is going there to win. He is certainly not going to the Ducati Lenovo team to play a supporting role to Pecco Bagnaia. So, however strong this package may end up being, there's no guarantee that it's going to be Pecco Bagnaia that takes full profit from it, because Bastianini will certainly be looking to go in there and make Ducati Lenovo team his team.
Well, this year's MotoGP grid, without any question, is one of the strongest we've ever had. There are no weak teams, no weak bikes, no weak riders, but you do feel that the Ducati Lenovo team with both Bagnaia and Bastianini is the strongest duo of that 22-strong lineup. Of course, Honda, well, they've added some top names to their roster. They've been the biggest beneficiary of the Suzuki departure, because Alex Rins, who ended 2022 in some style, phenomenal victories in arguably the race of the season in Phillip Island, won the last Grand Prix of the year in Valencia. Not been an easy transition over to the Honda, but they have got Rins and Mir on that motorcycle, and perhaps crucially as well, maybe one of the most significant signings that Honda made during the winter was to get Ken Kawauchi, the very well respected and highly regarded Suzuki technical boss, of course, no longer employed by Suzuki in this paddock, so he was snapped up by HRC to lead development of that project. Of course, it's going to be weeks, months, maybe even years before we see the full influence of Ken Kawauchi on the RC213B, but that's a real positive, I think, Lewis, for Joan Mir and Alex Rins, because they know Ken Kawauchi, they know his capabilities, they know his experience, his knowledge, and they trust him. And to have that familiar face in there, and knowing that he's going to be in there, not necessarily banging heads together and banging level, and that's just going to be a boost for Mir and Rins, having that familiar face in their camp.
And they know that there's a process that's being followed when Ken Kawauchi is in the pit box with the clipboard in hand, trying to work through a plan to try and bring Honda back to the glory days that they haven't enjoyed since late in 2019. Joan Mir said as much in pre-season testing, that seeing Ken in the box just gives me confidence that we will ultimately get there. And of course, Joan Mir has found that adaptation from the Suzuki across to the Honda just as difficult as Alex Rins did, particularly here at the Autodromo International de Algarve. This part of the racetrack we're looking at now was where Joan Mir and Honda were suffering so badly with the power delivery coming out of the final corner onto this start-finish straight here in Portimao. They were losing so much time hand over fist through the fourth and first sectors of the lap, which take in the two halves of this main straight. So that is one of the areas that Joan Mir in particular was losing out in pre-season testing, but there's certainly no problems and no lack of talent on the riding front for Honda this season. 10 in fact World Championships, of course, across their Repsol Honda lineup, with Marc Marquez's 8 World Crowns and Joan Mir a 2-time World Champion in his own right. So if Honda aren't successful in 2023, they certainly cannot blame their riders.
Well, we're getting our money's worth out of the drone already, aren't we? Fantastic shots here then, overlooking what is a magnificent Algarve International Circuit, nestled on Portugal's south coast. Perfect location to kick off this 2023 World Championship campaign. It's got lots of overtaking opportunities, lots of hard braking, fast corners, and elevation, which sees it quite rightly dubbed the roller coaster. It's MotoGP's ultimate white knuckle ride. We can't wait to jump on board it tomorrow for practice one. Myself and Lewis will be with you for the opening session of MotoGP. A few people probably wondering why we're not starting in our traditional season opener under the night lights in Qatar at the Lusail International Circuit. Well, there's a very good reason for that, is because right now the infrastructure, in particular the main paddock facility over in Doha, is undergoing a multi-million-pound revamp, and that is the reason why we will not be going to Qatar until November the 19th. So we will be making our traditional stopover in the Middle East, but right at the end of the season rather than right at the start.
In the penultimate round of this 21 weekend MotoGP World Championship, which will come to a close on the final weekend of November. We'll have to get our thick coats ready for the trip to Valencia on November the 24th, 25th and 26th.
Coats?
Will we have...
I'll be getting a Christmas tree out.
Yeah, we will. Opening our advent calendars shortly following the final race of the season. Will it come down to another decider, as it did at the end of last season? The nail-biting conclusion as Pecco Bagnaia held off Fabio Quartararo for his first World Championship in the Premier class, Ducati's first since 2007. So many points, as we mentioned, up for grabs this weekend. 21 Grand Prix races, 21 sprints. And you feel that this year, more than any other in the history of the Grand Prix Motorcycle World Championship, consistency is going to be all important. If you can register big points in as many of those 42 opportunities as possible, it's going to take you a long way to being crowned the 2023 World Champion.
Yeah, and can anybody knock Ducati off their perch, out of their position of authority? Last year, they won the rider, the constructor and the team championship. They also won the independent team title with Prima Pramac Racing. They won the independent rider crown with an Air Bastianini, and just to throw in for good measure as well, Marco Bezzecchi was the Rookie of the Year on a Ducati as well. They wiped the floor with the competition in 2022. Can Honda respond? Can Marc Marquez retaliate? I'm sure many of you watching at home, like myself and Lewis did, we tuned into what was a fascinating kind of no-holds-barred look into Marc Marquez's last 2 or 3 years. Of course, a part of his career which has been dominated by that serious right arm injury he suffered in Jerez at the start of that delayed 2020 season. He did an Amazon Prime documentary, All In, which showed, one, what Marc Marquez has been through over these last 2 or 3 years. It's been a real tough rehab. It covers the moment he had that big spill in Jerez. It covers the career-saving operation he had in Minnesota straight after the Italian Grand Prix Mugello last year. And what it did cover, and what I couldn't believe, Lewis, was it just shows how much hunger, how much desire, how much commitment still courses through Marquez's veins. He wants that 9th world title so badly. Before we pick up again on the number 93, one team that had a memorable 2022 season, it was the Factory Aprilia team. They were title contenders with Aleix Espargaro all the way down to the penultimate race in Malaysia. They famously won, of course, their first Grand Prix in Argentina. High hopes then, certainly resting on the shoulders of Aleix Espargaro and his crew led by Antonio Jimenez, and we can hear from him with Simon.
Antonio, super experienced man you are. I was looking forward to ask you a lot of things. I'm not sure you're allowed or can answer all of them, but can you give the listeners an idea, first of all, Aleix's surgery, his arm pump, and why he did it, and you think he's going to be all right coming into this first race, you know, after the operation, but also give us a rundown on how you feel pre-season testing went.
Well, Aleix, I think he's quite good, because the problem here during the last test in Portimao, he suffered a lot, but he be strong and he pushing to achieve the test, because it was so important to test a lot of things, but with a lot of painful. And so he spent the day after in the hospital in Barcelona. They make a lot of tests, and at the end they see that it was some problem, like some obstruction on the muscle. And so they decide to operate. I think it's not a really complicated operation, so they clean up everything, and immediately so he felt much better.
Has he ridden a bike or even at a go-kart track or on a circuit at all?
Bicycle, you know. This is sure. Probably the same day or the day after. No, but he looks. He know himself. He had the problem, and now he don't feel this problem anymore. So now we have to see the things he will have tomorrow, but sure we will go step by step. We had quite a good test here, and so we're very looking forward to him to be fit and prepared to a big fight.
Last year, Aleix, your crew, the Aprilia team, did an amazing job. Like, I think basically you achieved more than most people expected. I'm curious what you feel about the new machine. I know it's very similar, but looks like Aprilia have touched most areas. Do you feel it's a step forward, and how do you feel potential going into 23?
Yeah, the base is quite similar. So we, as you say, we make a little step in every area to improve the bike, and looks like it's worked well. But you know, it's difficult in the test to see what we are exactly. So we will see this probably from tomorrow in the time attack, and now we have to see if all these little things are also performing in the race distance. You know, especially because also this year we have this time attack race. I will say no sprint race. For me, it will be something very aggressive, and so yeah, we are quite happy with the bike. So of course we need more kilometers, but the test was the same for everyone, and so I think we are prepared to at least to be in the level that we finished last year.
Thank you, Antonio. I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Antonio Jimenez, crew chief for Aleix Espargaro, who, just to pick up on the story there, the fibrosis that he suffered in his arm, which forced him to call an early halt effectively to the Portimao test here a couple of weeks ago. He underwent surgery on that 9 days ago, did the 33-year-old. But it's good to hear that he's not suffering from any pain, and immediately felt that the problem had been removed. Although, of course, the first real acid test will come tomorrow when he rides a motorcycle for the first time since that surgery. He couldn't really do more than 2 or 3 laps at a time by the end of the Portimao test. Just no strength, he said, in that arm. So tomorrow will give the firm answer as to whether those problems are behind him. And he'll certainly be hoping so, because once again, it looks as if Aprilia are coming into the new MotoGP season with a very formidable and competitive package underneath them.
Yeah, but it didn't stop him cycling though, did it? Aleix Espargaro, he loves to pound the miles up on the mountains over in Andorra. He did post some pictures of himself travelling to Portimao with his family, and there was a noticeable 3 or 4 inch scar on that right forearm where he had that operation. But as Lewis mentioned, he will find out the extent of that recovery and how much pain he may still well be in that 45-minute P1 session tomorrow morning. So we're going to get the full grid in terms of machinery lining up on this Algarve International Circuit. I'm delighted to say, actually, we've got beautiful, beautiful weather here. Of course, the Algarve coast is famous for surfing and for golfing. It's a holiday maker's paradise, this part of Portugal. But the forecast looks really good as well for the weekend, because cast your minds back to last year. It was absolutely horrible. Baltic it was down here, freezing cold, loads of rain. I think the first full dry session that the MotoGP riders had was Q2, and even then there was still a few damp patches littered around the circuit. And let's not forget as well, it was in Q1 last year on a damp patch when he gambled on a Michelin slick rear tyre that Pecco Bagnaia had a very, very hefty crash. In fact, he had to go to a local hospital. Concerns that he might have fractured his right collarbone. Thankfully, he was declared fit and came back to have a really good ride, actually, because he started 24th and fought his way through to 8th place. And talking of great recoveries in Portimao, that's just leapt into my head, Lewis. Alex Rins, yes. Last year, what a sensational first lap he had.
Yeah, he came from P nowhere, effectively, all the way through to 4th by the end of it. But we posted, in fact, on MotoGP social media channels a couple of days ago. So head to our social media channels now to watch that first lap all over again. He comes from the very back of the field, and he's way inside the top 10 by the time he completes that first lap. He just sails around the outside of a whole bunch of riders coming through that first couple of corners at a stage where, of course, Alex Rins was in such incredible form. He started and ended 2022 as arguably the form rider in the field. He was certainly the form rider in the field at the end of last season, winning 2 of the last 3 Grand Prix. He makes his 100th MotoGP Grand Prix start this weekend, and he's looking to make a certain piece of history, a piece of history that was last made by Valentino Rossi, who won consecutive Grand Prix on different manufactured motorcycles when he, of course, won his final race for Honda and his first for Yamaha. Although, based on what we've seen so far in pre-season testing, it would take a minor miracle for Alex Rins to emulate that achievement, but he's certainly a naturally talented rider, and you kind of feel that if Honda do make progress as the season unfolds, it will bring Alex Rins along with them.
There is the motorcycle that will certainly carry home hopes here this weekend. There was a few hundred people came through the doors to see Miguel Oliveira finish his pre-season preparations here in Portimao just a few days ago. And those grandstands will be packed to the rafters to see if he can repeat his heroics of 2020 when he was on the KTM Tech 3 machine. Just in the background there, trying to catch our first glimpse of our reigning world champion, Pecco Bagnaia. There's one of his VR46 Academy stable mates, Marco Bezzecchi. Interesting to see what Bez can do this year, having get the machinery upgrade to Ducati's GP22. 8 Ducatis on the grid this year. There's an equal split in terms of the latest spec GP23. They'll be in the hands of Bagnaia and Bastianini in the factory team, of course. Zarco and Martin, they keep their latest spec machinery as well. The 4 GP22s, well, they will be campaigned by both Marco Bezzecchi and Luca Marini, who really shone in winter testing, the fattest man in Sepang and over in Valencia at the back end of last year. And let's not forget, of course, the Gresini team that won 4 Grand Prix last year with Enea Bastianini. They will field Fabio Di Gianantonio, and they welcome Alex Marquez, who I think it's fair to say is loving life on a Desmos Adichie after 3 very, very tough and barren years over at Honda. He's smiling like a Cheshire cat right now, as Alex Marquez is. Even some people believe that he may well be in the podium hunt here, both in the sprint on Saturday and the main feature race here on Sunday. Alex Marquez was certainly quick to dampen expectations, but he said just to be in that conversation, just to be in that mix of riders who may well be in that top 5, just shows what a great place he's in. Now then, Lewis just talked about Aleix Espargaro's late injury woes. Well, let's find out exactly the condition of our number 41 then going into this opening Grand Prix, because Aleix Espargaro is with Simon.
He is, and his son. Aleix, we just spoke to your crew chief, Antonio, and he said immediately after the operation you felt better, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Yeah, sincerely, hello everybody. I felt much better, but already the day after the surgery, I mean, I felt like a lot more free. I could move much better. On the test was surprisingly bad. I mean, I couldn't do more than 2-3 laps. But when I came into the pits, the arm was immediately okay. So it was when it was under pressure that I feel nothing on the hand. I couldn't control the bike. So they opened the arm, they cleaned everything, and immediately I felt good.
Can you give the listeners a bit of an idea how you feel going into the first race after pre-season testing? Meaning, how do you feel pre-season testing went?
The pre-season was good, you know, but I feel like if I was 15 years old, I'm still nervous, still butterfly on the stomach, you know. So this is always good. Testing, you know, I have a lot of experience, so testing can be good, can be bad, but at the end of the day, testing is testing, and racing is completely different, so I can't really wait to see the green light.
Aleix, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Simon. Thanks to Aleix Espargaro. He won't thank us for reminding him of this, but he is now the senior statesman in the MotoGP World Championship, isn't he? The number 41, the ripe old age of 33, 301 Grand Prix starts Aleix Espargaro has made, 217 in the Premier class. And I guess the objective, Lewis, for 2023 is to show that 2022 was no fluke. It was not a flash in the pan. Aprilia and Aleix Espargaro are here to stay as title contenders.
Yeah, not only will he be looking to show the performance that he showed early in last season, but he'll be looking to sustain that, as will Aprilia, for the entirety of the 2023 campaign. He took 6 podiums last season, did Aleix Espargaro, but 5 of them were in the first half of the season. Just that sole podium in the second half of the year at Motorland Aragon in September of last year. He had a best of 10th in the final 5 races of last season as their championship challenge faded. So Aleix Espargaro, of course, will be looking to benefit from the addition of the RNF satellite team. He was already feeling the benefit of that at Sepang, where he was able to look at Miguel Oliveira's data and immediately iron out one of his weaknesses around the Sepang International Circuit. So with the addition of the Crypto Data RNF Aprilia satellite team and, of course, the evolution of that RSGP from what was already a very solid package, they say they've made small steps forward in every area with that Aprilia for this season, which certainly appears on the basis of the whole of pre-season testing to suggest that Aprilia are the nearest challengers, all things considered, to Ducati.
Yeah, and who'd have thought we'd be saying that just a couple of years ago? There's been a massive swing in the pendulum in terms of the power brokers in this MotoGP World Championship. It's now very much the emphasis on Italian brands, isn't it? Particularly with Ducati and Aprilia. It's an old cliche. They say the first man you want to beat, the first rider you have to beat is your teammate, and there's a new enemy from within for Pecco Bagnaia to deal with. It's a man who he knows very, very well. They've not just raced at close quarters in the MotoGP World Championship, Pecco Bagnaia and Andrea Bastianini. Those two have locked horns since their formative years, tearing around car parks, I'd imagine, in Rimini. And so now then, one man who we have already earmarked as being a star for the new Saturday Sprint Showdowns. He's going to be pretty strong as well in the Sunday feature race. Let's hear the pre-season thoughts of Jorge Martin with Simon.
Yeah, Jorge, we already know how fast you are. I just want to know how you're feeling after pre-season testing going into the first race, and how you feel about the 23 bike.
Yeah, well, feeling ready. I feel super strong physically, also mentally. I feel like we have a really great bike. I enjoyed every lap during the pre-season testing. I was super strong. So confident. I think we work a lot on the race pace, so this will be a strong point for us. And yeah, I hope to still work on that regularity and consistency that we need from other years and battle for those first positions.
Thanks, Jorge.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Jorge Martin. Of course, who will forget that horrendous crash he had in his rookie year here at Turn 7 in FP3 in race 1 of 2021. Multiple fractures, missed the next 3 Grand Prix, but you know he's going to be in the mix. A lot of people actually feel like Jorge Martin is well capable of getting himself in the fight for the individual glory this year. Can he depose this man then, Pecco Bagnaia, who will very, very shortly sit astride with some pride, I'm sure, the factory Ducati emblazoned with the #1 plate. Worth noting as well, isn't it, of course, Lewis? Jorge Martin, not that he needs any motivation, but he's got a point to prove here with Ducati, because he was clearly very upset to be overlooked for that seat alongside Bagnaia. That went the way, of course, of Italy's Bastianini, and there's already been some murmurings in the winter. It kind of quietened down that maybe Martin's representatives have already been sort of feeling out options for next year. Yamaha were mentioned, so he won't be lacking motivation to show Ducati it should be me next to Pecco this year.
Yeah, well, he's already spoken to us at the pre-season launch and told us that he's open to offers for 2024, so he's not exactly keeping that quiet. But in many ways, what cost Jorge Martin was his start to last year. He failed to score in 5 of the first 7 races in 2022, at which stage Andrea Bastianini was winning 3 Grand Prix at the start of last season, and that really did sway Ducati's decision Bastianini's way. You can't really look at the course of the duration of last season and say that Ducati made the wrong call and Andrea Bastianini made it too obvious a decision for them to make. They couldn't really say no to him, given that he was fighting for the World Championship up until the last couple of races of the season. But what Ducati will want to do is try and see that as a positive for Martin. They're paying him pretty handsomely in terms of the remuneration. He's on a similar salary to Andrea Bastianini. He's on near enough identical machinery to Bastianini and Bagnaia, so they will hope that the fire within him of being in the satellite team rather than the factory team will serve as motivation to Jorge Martin. And you imagine, from a point of view of Ducati, they'll be saying to Jorge Martin, okay, go and prove us wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big year this for Jorge Martin. What he does know as well, though, is that door's closed in the factory squad for at least another 2 years. Of the riders on the current grid that are out of contract for 2024, Joan Zarco, well, he signed an extension. Well, Martin's not going to be interested in that seat because it's in the same camp that he's already in. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of deliberation about Frankie Morbidelli needing a big year. And, of course, with already Martin's name mentioned with Yamaha, that will be one to keep a very close eye on as well. Brad Binder, I believe, is in the last year of his 3-year contract with KTM. And, you know, if KTM don't put a motorcycle underneath him that can see him fight for the top 3, which he so desperately desires every weekend, then Binder's patience, I'm sure, will have a breaking point at some point. So there are some big hitters in this MotoGP grid. Predominantly, they are all on contracts for 2024 and beyond. But there will be some pretty priced seats up for grabs still next year.
Yeah, some very, very strong riders eyeing them up. You mentioned Brad Binder, of course, for the factory KTM squad, now partnered by Jack Miller, who joins him at that team. Brad Binder describing it as his best opportunity in MotoGP so far. He was very, very positive about the bike at the test in Valencia, although it appears as if that optimism has evaporated somewhat.
Is there high optimism that this man can be fighting for the win here in Portimao on Sunday? And what about further into our longest season in Grand Prix history? All the noises coming out of the Marquez camp and out of Honda right now are, no, it's just a bridge too far at the moment. We're not in the game. We're not where we want to be in terms of fighting Ducati and the Aprilia for the championship. An embrace there between the two current monster Yamaha teamsters, Fabio Quartararo and Frankie Morbidelli. As always, looking pretty calm and relaxed ahead of the big off here tomorrow.
And you mentioned Frankie Morbidelli. There is huge pressure on him going into this season to step up and try and go back to where he was prior to that switch to the factory team. Of course, he had a pretty big knee injury around the time of his switch to the Monster Energy Yamaha squad, but we haven't really seen the best of Frankie Morbidelli for a good couple of years now. So from his point of view, and from Yamaha's point of view, they'll be hoping that that changes to offer Fabio Quartararo, if anything, a little bit of support, because he so often last year ploughed a lone furrow against the Italian manufactured bikes, the 8 Ducatis and the 2 Aprilias. Fabio Quartararo was fighting a lone battle for Yamaha for much of last season. He'll be desperate to see that change this year.
So the 22 best riders in the world forming up for our special official photo shoot launch of the 2023 FIM MotoGP World Championship. They'll get to do it for real in Anger on Saturday afternoon. The sprint showdown for the very first time in Grand Prix history. There is our sole rookie this season, the reigning Moto2 World Champion Augusto Fernandez on the Gas Factory Racing Tech 3 machine. Rounded off his Moto2 career in some style in Valencia, didn't he? On the podium behind race winner Pedro Acosta, and with Ayagura crashing out of that final Grand Prix, it meant that Augusto Fernandez had the honour of being the 6th Spanish rider to lift the Moto2 title, joining a club including Tony Elias, the Marquez brothers, Paul Espargaro and Tito Rabat.
Has there ever been a tougher time to join the MotoGP class as a rookie, particularly as the sole rookie, with the level being so high nowadays? As mentioned earlier on, everybody that you see before you on this grid is a Grand Prix winner. Many of them are world champions. 13 of the riders on this grid have a world championship to their name. 24 titles in total before you on this MotoGP grid. So the learning curve ahead of Augusto Fernandez is practically vertical, and it'll be interesting to see how his MotoGP adventure progresses as the season unfolds.
Yeah, Wilco Zeelenberg said, didn't he, there's probably 15 riders that you could name that could win this Grand Prix. There's Davide Tardozzi, the Ducati team boss, just probably saying to Fabio Quartararo, can you give us a little bit of an easier ride this year? Because Davide Tardozzi, I've heard him speak so many times in nothing but glowing terms, as you'd expect he would. They know what a phenomenal rider Fabio Quartararo is. They know that Yamaha maybe not on par technically and performance-wise as that Ducati. This young man has performed heroics over the last couple of years to win the championship in 2021, to finish runner-up to Bagnaia last year. There are your current crop, your new generation of superstars in the MotoGP World Championship, having a little natter together before the serious business gets underway here tomorrow morning. Will Marc Marquez feature in the title battle? Will he be able to... You get the feeling, Lewis, from a physical standpoint, that this guy is ready to show the kind of form that he showed in 2019, where he steamrolled the opposition. The problem is, Marc Marquez looks way more ready than Honda.
Yeah, he's been at pains to point this out. You feel as if he's almost been sending a bit of an indirect message to Honda through the winter testing, saying that physically he feels fine now. The arm problems that have plagued him ever since that horrible crash out of the Spanish Grand Prix that started the 2020 season are now a thing of the past for Marc Marquez. So too the diplopia, which really hit him at the early part of last season after that horrible crash in Indonesia. Marc Marquez is ready to challenge. He now needs the motorcycle to challenge with. He produced some simply extraordinary qualifying performances late in last season, particularly his front row qualifying performance in Sepang was one of the best qualifying performances, I think, of the season. So Marc Marquez is certainly ready, and I think he is one rider who will be absolute box office in the Saturday sprints.
Well, that man on your screens right now, just coming for a little chat with Marc Marquez. Of course, a man who needs no introduction, Dorna CEO Carmelo Espeleta, a man who's instigated and overseen some of the biggest changes in Grand Prix racing to make this championship what it is today, one of the best forms of motorsport in the world. And he'll oversee another big change, of course, this weekend with the new sprint format. And this is great to see as well. We're going to every single rider on the grid, every rider to a man. Carmelo Espeleta, the Dorna CEO, going to speak to them before this official photo shoot. Now then, they ran right last year. They dominated every championship that was available. Can they defend the rider title, though? They've won it twice now. Can they get the hat-trick done this year? Pecco Bagnaia is the world champion. Bastianini into that factory team. Let's see the thoughts of factory Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi.
Davide, I can't remember, like looking from the outside, I can't remember a season where Ducati looked better prepared. How does it feel like from the inside?
We are really proud about that, and it's really big honor to have our bike here on the grid on the first places. Having number one is something that let us smile, but now we became serious and looking forward to keep it, and it will be very tough.
Thank you, Davide.
Thank you.
It will be very tough. Thanks, Simon. Thanks to Davide Tardozzi. There are no sleepers on this 2023 FIM MotoGP World Championship grid. There you go then, ladies and gentlemen. That is your class of 2023 assembled and ready for a brave new era in the MotoGP World Championship. The addition of the Saturday Sprint, bringing more drama to your living rooms throughout this season. Who will prevail at the end of the longest season in World Championship history? 13 world champions on your picture there. 13 have won Premier Class races, 116 wins between them. This man has taken more than any of them combined, Marc Marquez, with 59 MotoGP wins. Every single rider in that picture and on this grid here at the Algarve International Circuit, all 22 riders have GP victories in at least one class. You are looking at the elite of the elite, the best of the best. 326 Grand Prix victories between them. Can't wait for this season, Lewis.
We're so close now to the opening lights out of the season. Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. local time, as the sprint sets off a marathon MotoGP season. So much talent, so much quality throughout this grid, so many stories that will be told across 21 Grand Prix and 21 sprints. Jorge Martin here on your picture. Will he be one of the big winners of the brand new sprint format? Can he take the fight to his factory Ducati colleagues? What will the dynamic be between Enea Bastianini and Pecco Bagnaia? If Ducati do enjoy an advantage, will it be a battle between the boys from Bologna for the World Championship? So many riders will be looking to have a say in that. Fabio Quartararo, of course, Marc Marquez, Joan Mir, how will he fare now in Repsol on Honda Orange? So many stories, and we cannot wait to tell them all to you over the course of the next 8 months.
21 rounds, 18 countries, 4 continents, 42 races. And come November the 26th at the Ricardo Tormo Circuit in Valencia, we will know who will be our latest world champion. 777 points are on the table when we get underway here in the sprint on Saturday. That'll be run over 12 laps. We can't wait for that one, bringing another, as we said, fascinating dynamic to the weekend. Pecco Bagnaia and Ducati, they are the big pre-season favourites to be the first rider to retain the #1 plate in over 25 years. Marco Bezzecchi, there's big hopes. Valentino Rossi said from his men, Bezzecchi and Luca Marini, he expects them to take that next step this season. He wants that first win for his team, the Muni VR46 racing team. Of course, they had a podium last year in Assen with Bezzecchi. He then took their first pole position in Buriram, but they won that first win. Luca Marini, certainly one of the hot men in winter testing. You can never discount as well, can you, Marc Marquez, as we get set to raise the curtain on 2023. MotoGP back bigger and better than ever before. Johann Zarco, another rider. 9 riders on this MotoGP grid that are chasing their first win at this level, and none more experienced than Zarco. 105th Grand Prix start in the Premier Class he will make here this weekend. There's Jack Miller, of course, a big move for him from Ducati to Red Bull KTM. We should say congratulations to Jack and his wife Ruby. They've got a baby on the way due in September. My only advice, Jack, is mate, get plenty of sleep between now and then.
Well, he'll be spending an awful lot of the time on the other side of the world, won't he? The baby's due in September, at which point he'll be out there somewhere in Japan or India, perhaps, as we head on to the new frontier to the Bud International Circuit late in September. So many fascinating venues. Of course, this season, the first ever visit to the Sokol International Circuit in Kazakhstan, which will bring an end to the first half of the season before the summer break in July as well. We're looking forward to heading there too for another exciting new location on the MotoGP calendar.
So much to look forward to this year. We can't wait to bring it to you from all the 4 corners of the globe, starting here this weekend at the Algarve International Circuit in Portimao. There'll be a monumental milestone racked up this year, Le Mans, the French Grand Prix, which will be packed to the rafters as it was last year, particularly with Fabio Quartararo and Johann Zarco, certainly to be challenging at the front. That is the 1000th Grand Prix in history. A proud history, a distinguished history. But MotoGP and Dorna always looking to move the goalpost, to improve and advance this great show, which we love bringing to you. That will come, of course, in the form of the Saturday Sprint. I think that's so important as well. Over 30% of the points on offer this year will come in that Saturday Sprint. So good to see Alex Marquez on a bike that should enable him to show his true potential. A Moto3 and Moto2 world champion in the past 3, difficult years behind him now at Honda as he plies his trade on the year-old Ducati GP22. Very strong here in winter testing. A decent record as well around here in Portimao. Had a pretty good ding-dong with brother Mark last year for 6th place.
What the Saturday Sprint is going to introduce to Grand Prix weekends is a real necessity to be fast right out of the box this year. There is no time to ease your way into a Grand Prix weekend anymore. As mentioned earlier on, by the end of Friday free practice, the top 10 places for qualifying 2 will be locked off. So if you have a poor Friday now, it can impact you all the way into the Grand Prix weekend when the points are handed out. The 12 points for the sprint winner and 25 for the Grand Prix winner on the Sunday. So those who can adapt, those who can just wheel the bike out of the garage first thing on a Friday morning and immediately pump in the fast lap times, it is going to be so important to be fast quickly from the get-go in 2023.
Well, he's the fastest rider in the world right now, Pecco Bagnaia. He's now the fastest cameraman in the world as well, as he grabs the GoPro and takes the picture. Well, that will be on the websites, on the newspapers tomorrow of our 2023 FIM MotoGP World Championship grid. He is the man to beat, the man who with 7 wins and 10 podiums last year ended such a long barren run for the factory Ducati team. He will know though, it's one thing to win a world title, it's another thing to then go on and defend it and then to prove true greatness, as he said he wants to do, of course. He's not here just for one world title, he's here to put Ducati on top for many years to come. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There is your 2023 official photo shoot. There's Joan Mir, of course, the 2020 world champion. Very much Valentino Rossi-esque in that livery with the Dayglow yellow. I've got to say, out of all the liveries on show this year, I'm a big fan of Mir's.
Yeah, we did have to do a little bit of a double take in the MotoGP social media department when we first saw that Repsol Honda unveiled for 2023. I have to say, also big fan of the new gas colours for the Tech 3 squad this season. Those are perhaps the 4 elite, your last 4 world champions in MotoGP. Pecco Bagnaia in 2022, succeeding Fabio Quartararo. Joan Mir, of course, the 2020 world champion. Joan Mir and Marc Marquez, who spent a lot of the previous decade dominating this sport. He desperately wants to return to the summit of MotoGP. Those 3 riders that he stands alongside are surely going to be 3 of his key obstacles as Marc Marquez looks to complete the comeback from arm surgery to the very top of MotoGP as he shares a word with Fabio Quartararo. They are truly the elite of the elite.
Yeah, Honda still smarting from last year, the only manufacturer on the MotoGP grid in 2022 that ended the season without a victory. Marc Marquez will be looking to try and set that record straight so far this year. Everybody's down there trying to get selfies with their heroes. Of course, lots of new innovations this year. There's going to be a MotoGP parade after the warm, so if you are live here, get your tickets for the 21 races. You will see your heroes out on the circuit immediately after the warm session. The hero walk is back for those of you looking to be in the paddock. So there's going to be a lot more access to your superheroes in 2023, as well as the Italian riders get set to do an Italian job in 2023. There is Luca Marini on the left-hand side now. He just looks so happy, so comfortable, so confident on that GP22, which he did race last year. I think he's the only Ducati rider actually out of all 8 that have not had a change of machinery for this season. He hasn't let that, though, deter him, has he? Luca Marini. He's on a proven race winning package, and he knows now it's time to take that next step. There are your VR46 Academy Quartet. They didn't just push Fabio Di Giannantonio out the way there for nothing. These are the Rossi riders, of course. A fair few Grand Prix victories and World Championships between that quartet.
Marco Bezzecchi and Luca Marini looking to add their name to the list of winners in the Premier class, and I think we're right to pinpoint Luca Marini as one of the real dark horses going into this season. The fact that he's going into the 2023 season on a GP22 just as he did last season might well prove to be an advantage early on in this Grand Prix season. Marini was doing sprint simulations all the way back in Sepang, so he's effectively, I think, been treating the Portimao test here a couple of weeks ago as an extended opening practice session for the Portuguese Grand Prix, so don't expect him to take too long tomorrow morning to get quickly up to speed.
So there are our 6 Italian riders then that are gunning for glory in this year's MotoGP World Championship. Fabio Di Giannantonio looks like a completely different character compared to last year, with a new crew chief, Frankie Carcetti, moved over from Joan Mir and Suzuki. There are your Honda quartet, who you have to say have it all on to make that RC213V competitive, certainly race-winning competitive in the early part of the season. Okay, well, that's it for our photo opportunities for 2023. A blockbuster season is upon us. The MotoGP boys get down to business at 10:45 AM local time for practice. All that's left for us to say is best of luck to all the riders and teams competing this year. And from myself and Lewis, have a fantastic 2023 season. It's going to be a special one. Bye for now.
Thank you very much to Matt Burton, Lewis Suddaby there, and Simon as well, down in pit lane for that brilliant coverage of the class photos for 2023 in Moto3, Moto2 and MotoGP. Simon, as we said, you were down there. A lot of nervous energy, I imagine. What was the atmosphere like?
Actually, you're dead right. It feels like testing is finished. They're at a race and you can feel it in the riders. So, yeah, I feel it as well.
Great to see all 22 Premier Class stars out there on their steeds ahead of what's going to be an incredible season of action. To preview that, we've now got a very special podcast. Fran Wilde, as ever, hosting it alongside MotoGP's Chief Sporting Officer, Carlos Espeleta. Yes, Simon?
And before you go over there, I just wanted to throw in this. I hope you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Often when the young, the son moves in, he doesn't carry the weight of dad. I've had the opportunity to sit down a couple of times with Carlos, and my feeling is the championship's in really good hands with him. You watch and listen and you decide. Back to you, Jack. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem whatsoever. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And as you say, an opportunity for you guys to make your own minds up ahead of what's going to be an exciting season. A lot of changes, including the introduction of MotoGP Sprint. A few changes on Sunday as well to cover all of it. As we said, Carlos Espeleta, MotoGP Chief Sporting Officer, is with our very own Fran Wild. Over to you guys.
Hello, yes, I saw a zoom in on the screen, beautiful. Welcome everyone, if you're listening in audio, welcome a little later. Welcome everyone to our very first Thursday Gear Up of the season here in Portugal. Welcome Carlos, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're trying to make it more casual. Obviously, first one of the year, it's like, hello, how are you? But we're in Europe, first time in quite a long time. It's great to be back. We've got more MotoGP than ever to look forward to. First of all, for you being sort of the part of the sport that you are, how excited are you for the year ahead? Easy question first, because I know the answer is very, but maybe a few more words.
Well, in fact, it is. Super excited to start this season. It's probably the most disruptive season that we've had in history, and I think that the sport welcomes it. As you're saying, it's the first time we start in Europe in over 20 years. Which is great. We were just down there for the photo shoot and for the riders, and there's just so much atmosphere in a European paddock. So many journalists are here, which probably wouldn't be maybe if we were in Qatar. And it looks like it's going to be a big sellout this weekend here at Portugal. So really happy, and as you were saying, first of the new format. So.
It is the first of the new format. Now, where do we go next? I think we'll go for new format next, then we'll talk a little bit more about the calendar. Obviously, the MotoGP Sprint, biggest thing. Arguably the biggest shake-up in the sport since we had different categories. Obviously, the dawn of the MotoGP era. Before that, the changes of capacity, machinery. Why is now the time, do you think, for the sport to do that? It seems like there's a great opportunity at the moment, and what is kind of adding the sprint going to do for the sport, and why is the time now?
Well, yeah, I'd agree so. I think that it is definitely the biggest change, specifically in format of the weekend that we've had. And I think that now it's the right time, because that's when everybody has agreed it's the right time. And it's, making changes like this is quite challenging. And
I was going to say, what goes into it? For anyone who thinks that you or someone else just sits down and goes, I think we should change this, and then everyone goes, okay, yes, you send it in a WhatsApp group and the job's done. What does it actually require? Because there's so many moving parts to the sport.
Yeah, and in Dorna we're very proud of consensus and agreeing and convincing rather than imposing. And I think that's been the case with Sprint. I think that it took some weeks, definitely a lot of meetings with all the stakeholders, the FIM.
Did anyone cry, or was it all?
No, it was all happy and no tears. And then, there was things that we changed, and during that summer last year, and I think that we've come up with a good consensus for all. We're not super proud, so if something doesn't work, we won't mind changing it again. And there's definitely MotoGP Sprint, 3 p.m. on Sundays is the main course. On Saturdays, sorry, 3 p.m. on Saturdays is the main course of the meal, of the change. But there's a lot more to what Dorna is doing, to what the teams are doing and the riders, to be able to both give more to the fans, which are at the heart of our product, but also to gain more fans, which is what we're about.
Yeah, obviously, and with having more racing action, and it has its own identity as well. We've got a few changes with the podium for the sprint as well, and that kind of stuff. We've also got the rider parade on Sunday morning. Definitely for people at the track, that's going to be a really cool new thing. Being able to see the riders on Sunday morning going around and actually see them in person, because obviously helmet down is very cool, but it's a different kind of experience than seeing their face. But is that kind of, how do you find that balance between the stuff for the guys who come to the track and also the TV and the millions of people who watch at home? Because it's a good balance to find.
Well, first off, I think that having something that is really cool live at the event itself makes it just much cooler as well to watch live, and for us to portray and for it to be perceived, because it is like that Dorna cares about making our events, and MotoGP cares about making the fans having the best experience possible, is at the center of Dorna's philosophy. And you know, you're speaking about MotoGP events, and most of them, if not all, are destinations by itself. We're not lucky enough to be able to race at the center of capital cities. So all our fans, hundreds of thousands of fans, are making their way to our events, and the least we can do for them is to engage with their heroes. And that's, you know, of course, now with the double race, a sprint on Saturday and the race on Sunday, but also the parade show, being able to see, to hear, to touch the riders, it's a big advantage.
It's definitely cool. And obviously on the sporting side, which is your kind of main thing as well, it's quite a lot to think about as a rider. And there's now, I think it's 777 points overall that are now available this season. Quite a few on Saturday. Obviously the same 25 points for the win in the Grand Prix race on Sunday. That's pretty exciting as well, isn't it? Because that means there's so many moving parts throughout the year. As we kind of we're lucky enough here with such close competition, we often have deciders in the final round or penultimate round. That adds a whole new kind of cog to the system, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, we calculated it on purpose for it to be 777 because 7 is the lucky number.
For those looking for the cynicism, there you have it.
No, it was quite a funny you know, outcome to the number of points in play this season. But I think, you know, sprint is not just another race. Sprint is a different format. You know, great 20-minute lights off, you know, race as fast as you can. For 20 minutes, and then it's the checkered flag, so really easy to understand. It's meant as a hook for new fans to the sport itself, and a reminder that there's a race the next day. We've worked hard also with our broadcasters, and many of them will be aired in different territories. Some of them.
Yeah, I was going to say there's some interesting stuff there as well. It's exciting for.
And yeah, and some interesting mix with the broadcasters in different countries. A lot of them showing the sprint race at some events on free to air, which is, you know, it's a great attraction. It's great traction for new fans. It's a great hook for the race on Sunday. So, you know, really happy. I think that we'll have. I personally think that we won't have many repeated winners Saturday to Sunday.
Okay, because we did ask all the riders, didn't we, throughout testing, did a little video, and I think a lot of people were either 50% or higher, they think it'll be the same winner. I agree with you.
I think
there'll be some Saturday heroes and some Sunday heroes.
I think, you know, going back to 2020, where we were racing at the same circuit in consecutive weekends, and I think it was only one out of the 7 that there were with the same winner, which was Fabio in Jerez, I think it was. And this is a totally different, you know, it's half the number of laps. You shouldn't, I guess, shouldn't be taking that much care of your tire or fuel, or, well, there is a limitation on fuel. But so I think, you know, it's a different strategy, and, you know, I think that the new guys on the block and the young ones are definitely going to want to make a name for themselves.
It is an interesting one, and yeah, I guess it is different. I think one of the, I won't name them, one of the crew chiefs from a MotoGP team said, like, basically, that's when you get the best information anyway. So even for people who maybe are like, oh, I don't know, like, I like my traditional Grand Prix racing, even from that standpoint, the technical info they can gain from having more racing laps, when it's not just you, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if I was alone here and it was simply a time trial? There'll be people in your way, you'll learn a lot more about that. You'll see, like, the track offline, see how the grip develops. There's a lot to learn for them as well.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing new this year is that MotoGP is always on track after Moto2. Which before was only on the race day, and now it's going to, you know, that sort of gives them more information. The track is going to be more consistent. And to your point, yeah, you know, I think there's teams and riders that need less information during Friday and Saturday to be fast and to be immediately, you know, competitive, and others that take a bit longer. And you don't know which way sprint is going to work on, you know, is it going to be better for the riders that need less time because it's, you know, it's a smaller, shorter race, you need to be fast in qualifying, or are those other riders going to have an advantage because they have that much more information from Saturday?
Exactly. And then finally on this then, obviously it's at every single race weekend. So the change we've seen other sports, everyone knows who we're talking about, introduce it at a few events, but here it's like, no, all or nothing, straight in. Do you think, obviously you said before that continuity is what was important, do you still think that's as important now? We're facing down 21 race weekends now, and we've got 21 sprints, but every single event offers that same incredible show in the format.
I think that MotoGP and other motorsports, we have an incredible advantage to, you know, an incredible property, but also an advantage in having the ability to shape our calendar and to have all events count the same. There's no Grand Slam, and that, you know, commercially for us is huge, but also for our fans. And I think it was important for us to have the same format every weekend. I think it's, you know, it is.
I agree.
A big part of it. People know that there's going to be Saturday and Sunday. You don't forget. Oh, there was a sprint this weekend. So I do think that it's the right way going forward. But of course, as I said, you know, we're not stubborn. We'll react for positive change. And you know, I just hope that we're off to a good start. That we have safe racing here on Saturday and Sunday, and then we'll build some experience.
We will indeed. So calendar chat then. Obviously, 2 big ones this year that we've announced are Kazakhstan and India. How's that looking at the moment? How are you excited as well with this new year we've got this year? Obviously, we're starting in Europe, like we said, first time in a while. Then we've got Argentina, Americas, then our European stint, then a really long kind of flyaways at the end of the year. How are you feeling about the season, and what are thoughts on India and Kazakhstan now we're getting a bit closer to the events?
Yeah, well, so first off on the calendar, you know, as has been informed, Qatar is going over extensive makeup deal to the track.
Which is exciting because it was already extremely nice. So yes. I'm like, wow, what are we going to go back to?
The layout is staying the same, but you know, the infrastructure is going to be, as everybody can imagine, you know, top notch, great for the spectators, the guests, and the teams and riders as well. So yeah, we needed to move that back to the later part of the calendar, and having Qatar there has made us shape everything. As we've been communicating lately, you know, we're super interested in reducing our carbon footprint. And logistics is definitely the biggest part of that. So we've done it in a way that we had all the Eastern races together.
Because it kind of looks like if you now were like, okay, you're going to backpack through these countries, it's kind of the way you do it anyway.
Yeah.
So it really does make sense to put it together, doesn't it?
Energetically and from a carbon footprint point of view, the most efficient way to go around the world for us. And you know, starting in Europe, as I said, was a great you know, was a great asset to the championship. I don't think it'll be the same next year, and you know, probably Qatar. It looks like Qatar will be returning to be the first event of the year. So that's, you know, headlines out there. But
I've made sure we've been putting, because of works, so we've not been suggesting the opposite, but yeah. Because I think there's pros and cons to both, isn't there? Because obviously in terms of the logistics, and also anyone listening, you probably don't know all of the stuff that we do before you actually get the races. There's photo shoots, there's the new opening credits and everything that's out today. That's all been filmed here in Portimao before the event with the test, and then the Moto2, Moto3 test. It's useful, isn't it, when you can send everything in trucks down the road, and then it's there. But there's also the beautiful night vibe of Qatar also adds its own kind of, I was like, chispa, what's that in English? You'll be able to tell me. You
yeah,
speak
spark.
better than me. Spark. There you go.
Yeah, you know, there's pros and cons. You know, Qatar is an incredible place to open the season, with it being our only night race in the calendar, and we love being there. That's our target for next year. But then, you know, we have to pay attention to logistics and how you know, we make sure that our carbon footprint is as low as possible. And then, you know, as you were saying, two new events in the calendar this year. It's been a long time since we haven't had that. And, you know, I think Kazakhstan will surprise everybody. Almaty's a great city. And, you know, we're excited for that in July.
Because you've been, haven't you? So we're all like, tell us.
I have been in Almaty. It's very lively, good vibes. So yeah, Kazakhstan in July. It also, you know, makes sure that we don't go off or out for too long in the summer. And then India, of course, a huge potential for all of us, you know, to grow our audience in the country with the biggest number of two wheels in the world, and
providing my perfect segue for the next topic there. Thank you.
Exactly, and the biggest population from this year in the world also, as it overtakes China.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So
you heard that here first as well.
So yeah, a bit of economics, yes. so really happy for both of those. I think that the paddock, going back to the calendar, the paddock of course understands it, but no, we also understand that it's hard humanly on the staff, not only the teams, but of course Dorna. Those 8 races in 10 weeks, and we don't like to finish as late as we're doing this year. But it's the way that has been, and I'm sure that we're up for an amazing end to the season. So
I'm really excited. I'm one of those people who likes it like switched off or switched on. So for me, triple header off. I'm like, yes, that's perfect, because it's just like that's for me. But yeah, it is definitely obviously a challenge, and it is quite different to what we've seen before as well. It'll also be different for the riders. Going back to India then, and your perfect segue you provided. Obviously this year there's a lot new in terms of the sprint on track. Next year we're starting to see sustainable fuels, or certainly more sustainable fuels. 40% minimum. Talk to us a little bit about that, because that's another thing where it's not as simple as just saying like, okay, we're going to do this, go. Obviously a big project to be able to centralize everyone, agree all of the terms, agree exactly what each fuel will comprise, who's going to be involved, factory agreement, obviously really key with that as well. Talk us through sustainable fuels and how that has kind of come together, because it's exciting, another step for the sport as well.
Yeah, it's definitely been part of the agenda for a long time, and in MotoGP we're reactive to what happens in the industry, but also proactive to be able to push positive change. We spoke to the manufacturers all during 2021 and 2022 about which years those figures, 40% and 100%, would be implemented on. And
sorry, I should add 100% 2027.
Yes, and it took some considerable debate. Of course, you have to think that every single manufacturer thinks about every rule change as a possibility of gaining or losing advantage, and they always think that everybody else is voting in their own advantage, without thinking about the championship or the greater good. So that's probably, and it's into Dorna's position to sort of, achieve compromise. And we would of course like for it to be as soon as possible. And 2024 it was reasonable. It's going to be across all classes. It's going to not be one single fuel supplier. So we will have, I think it's 6 different fuel suppliers in the paddock. Also, for example, independent teams, some of them have their own fuel supplier. So, really positive change, really important for us that manufacturers, bike manufacturers, but tire manufacturers, fuel manufacturers, leathers, helmets, all of them, they continue to use MotoGP as a testing, laboratory, as a testing platform to develop products to make the world a better place, and sustainable fuel is one. And for those of you listening, it'll be a drop in fuel, which means that they'll be able to drop it in literally into the engines that we're using now, and they will work. There will be some small losses of power, which we welcome in lines of safety. But the target is for that fuel carbon neutral to be available, on the streets of the world for those, billions of motorbikes and millions in India alone to be running on that technology. And that's how MotoGP helps the world to make sure that, without losing safety, without, having to balance on performance, that what we do here helps. Exactly.
I think there was an incredible Carmelo quote from the Moto E launch last week that was like, competition's basically made everything happen. And I think it's so true though. So many steps forward in the last sort of 120 years of like powered transport properly. You can see such incredible steps forward from when things have had to find their limit because someone's racing it to win. Yes. It makes a big difference. And obviously here MotoGP, that's true of all those people, all the stakeholders, but also all the technology. And obviously we have Moto E, which becomes a world championship this year. That's kind of a parallel path of that sustainability and how we can improve that, obviously with the 0 emissions from the actual bike. But I think it's great that there's both technologies now within this same paddock that are being developed, that drop-in fuel and the electric mobility, that have such different applications as well. Because it's fine for us, going back to where we live, you could probably charge your electric bike. That's a little more challenging if you do live in Lombok and you're waiting for us to come for that race weekend. So those two technologies can really complement each other, can't they, and make that big difference.
Yeah, like I said, we're happy to provide platforms for manufacturers to develop their products on, being clear that we are in the sports entertainment industry, and that's what we care about, to make our product as entertaining as possible.
You can't come here and bore us, guys. You just have to be excellent and entertaining.
Yes, exactly. So develop your product, but make it exciting. But having said that, you know, clearly I think that there's different paths for sustainability, and Southeast Asia is a huge market for us and for the world in general, and for our manufacturers and brands, with more and more racing there in the past years. And like you were saying, there has to be a parallel solution for those vehicles, and definitely sustainable fuels is the correct one.
Cool. Well, there you go then. I don't know what else to ask you now. It's like that's all of our key topics for the sport. I would put you on the spot and make you predict champions, but I'm sure then you'll immediately get an incredible amount of messages from everyone you didn't mention yelling at you.
Yeah, we don't usually do that.
I know, right? It's just like stay away from that beautiful neutrality. But we have a few minutes left then. I think one of the other things that is an interesting thing for fans who kind of don't know how it works, because I don't want it to anyone listening to think that I'm telling you you have no idea. That's not the vibe at all. But the guys to get like a look behind the looking glass. In terms of Dorna, obviously the FIM do the rules. IRTA is like the teams association in the paddock. One thing I think that, having come from the riders briefing just earlier, the safety commission, that's a really important part of the sport. Dorna's there, Dorna's involved in a lot of different things, but what is the role that we have in the paddock? And what is your biggest goal then? That's where I'll put you on the spot. What's your biggest goal for the next 5 years? In 50 words or less.
I just got married and I'm expecting, so.
Okay, I wasn't going to bring that up. Yes, exactly. So work-wise.
I hope that goes well. But professionally wise, clearly the target for Dorna is to grow our global audience, to continue to have an amazing, the most entertaining motorsport that's out there, and you know, we need to clearly work on our storytelling to make make it available and make it known of how amazing those guys are and what they do. And you know, the riders are incredible heroes, and that links to the safety commission. It's definitely a huge.
What I was trying to get at, which I didn't say, I think there's more a collaborative effort behind the scenes than it seems.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of exchange, isn't there? And everyone kind of working together to try and make that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the riders, I think and we feel that the riders have a great voice in the championship, and we listen to them a lot and have been before it was fashionable. So we have been doing that for a long time. So we're very proud in that, and there's a safety commission, but also, you know, the riders have an incredible relationship with us, with Carmelo and the rest of the staff at Dorna, and we're very happy about it. So, you know, of course, there's different points of view, and we work on trying to make them as famous and as known as possible to the billions of people around the world. But we also understand that they have a race to win on Sunday, and of course it's a risky sport here. So, you know, there's a compromise to that, but I think the atmosphere in the MotoGP paddock is a great one, and I think everybody loves to be a part of it.
I think it really is. I think also, strangely, it's got so much, not closer than it wasn't before, but especially having gone through COVID with so much of an extra challenge for the sport, which we overcame pretty incredibly. Like you said, those races at the same track, obviously masks, so many different protocols had to put in place to keep the show going. And I think everyone got even closer through that. And it's
I hope you don't mean physically, because that wasn't that
Of course, we were constantly hugging and breaking every rule. No, but you know what I mean? It's really...
Everybody did get that sort of team effort going on in MotoGP, and it was, well, we finished here, and
yeah,
actually,
I keep forgetting that it was here.
Yeah, it was the only time that we haven't finished in Valencia, and it was actually in this same room where we had the awards, super low-key award ceremony for that COVID year. And things have definitely changed since then. But yeah, everybody grew closer. Everybody knew that it was a team effort by everybody having to comply with the rules and making a big effort, and spending a lot of time away from home at the end of 2020. But we definitely all got closer.
I kind of love it as well because it's like the competition is brutal, as it should be. But if there's something that's like not more serious because we race to win, it's a serious business. But you know what I mean? If there's like a genuine issue or something, everyone does pull together so much, and I think it's really palpable.
Yeah, and I think it's great. It's great that we all trust ourselves and trust the different parts of the business, that everybody's gonna perform and deliver their own part. And we just. We just hope we are up to the level of the great partners that we have.
Well, we'll try our best. I'll stop there for anyone listening going, yeah, it's so great. No, that wasn't the point. It's just that the atmosphere is genuinely great. It's such a treat to start in Europe, like you said as well. Pretty different, beautiful sunshine here in the Algarve. So yeah, I think that's pretty much...
I think we've been pretty lucky. I've been checking the weather for this weekend for about 5 months since we published the calendar, because I was
please.
I was nervous about it. Last year we were here at the end of April, so a month after, when the weather should be much better, and it was pretty bad last year here. We were pretty nervous, but we have a predicted forecast of 3 days of sunshine with over 20 degrees. So, I think it's going to be an amazing start to the new era.
With
really
the sunny weather then, what would it take for you to jump in the pool next to the media centre?
With the sunny weather, is that me against Fabio? For the win?
What would it take to convince you that was worth doing?
Well, if we have a good start to the new format, I wouldn't mind jumping in for a day.
Okay, I'm not actually going to hold you to that, but that's surprisingly low price. So
safe weekend is always does it.
Safe weekend, cool. Well, thank you for joining us, Carlos. Some good. Yeah, we did get a question about India and Kazakhstan, which I just asked you as it came up. So yeah, thanks to everyone who's listened and watched.
No more questions. That was pretty easy.
Yeah, you
can have me again then.
Cool. So yeah, the next 20 then. Yeah.
Nobody's interested.
Definitely not true. But yeah, thank you for coming. It's always good, I think, to get to know a little bit more behind the scenes, and yeah, just talk to someone who knows about these new changes and what's the thinking behind it, how it's going to work, all of that stuff. So yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It's weird me being in the position where it's like, thank you, you go now.
I can just leave. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks to everyone who's been watching as part of the Gear Up Show, and thank you to everyone who's listened. We'll be back again, and now it's nearly time for the press conference, and we will head, for those of us in Portugal, back to Simon and Jack.
Thank you very much to both Fran and Carlos for that fascinating insight. What we can expect coming up over the next 21 Grand Prix weekends from here right the way through to the end of November in Valencia, and the MotoGP podcast will be back this time next week from Argentina, a part of this brand new Grand Prix Gear Up show. We'll be giving you a special MotoGP podcast live from every venue that we visit, with the likes of Carlos, with riders, with team managers, so it's certainly not to be missed every weekend. Of course, Simon, the key focus there was something that we've touched on, of course, that the brand new format, the new era, such a huge change to what we've known MotoGP to be over recent years, with the reduction in practice time and more laps where points are going to be gained at the end of it. As a result of that, I think it's fair to say that in these opening couple of rounds where they come thick and fast, 3 in the space of 4 weeks, there are going to be some teams and riders that hit the ground running and really get a feel for this new format, and some that maybe take those 3 rounds to get their heads around it and how to be competitive with it.
As we've touched on already, there is a lot more pressure, when you add it up over the year because of the sprint, It's another start, a lot more opportunity to blow your year, and there's a lot more opportunity to get points on your opposition if you play it right. There's also, what I wanted to point out, is I've spoken to a few mechanics, and they have concerns about their rider crashing at the end of qualifying, and the time between the end of qualifying and the sprint is not enough to build a bike if it's a big one. And imagine if the combination happens where you do need 2 bikes. They have 2, but if you've lost one in qualifying and then it's showery, maybe that's the reason for the crash in the first place, you get some showers or bad, then it ends up being a flag to flag, So you can really put yourself in a bad position by making the mistake of crashing at the end of qualifying. And qualifying is about pushing to the limit, isn't it?
And
so the chance is quite high.
And it's more important than ever this year is qualifying. You know, it is such a balance of risk and reward is qualifying this year, because it will confirm the starting grid for the sprint and the Grand Prix. So you can't afford to be at 90% in qualifying and qualify on the third or fourth row, because then you're in trouble for both the sprint and the Grand Prix. It's such a dilemma for the riders to get their heads around.
Exactly, and we haven't had a sprint race, so I don't know. We're all learning. Everyone's learning as the season goes on, you know. We're going to know a lot more on Saturday evening. But what I saw in testing is that riders were approaching it in different ways. And if we've got time, I'd like to explain. There's really, in the dry, there's 3 ways that a rider will ride a machine, okay? So there's qualifying, where you go out and attack. I'm talking consume that rear tyre like never before. But also energy. You consume a lot of energy pushing to that level because you're forcing something to happen, and you consume more fuel, you know. So then the other 2 ways is to ride the machine as fast as possible, but taking into account tyre consumption, which is a normal way to ride a full-length GP, okay? And then the way to finish a race always is to ride as fast as you can go from a certain point with what you have left. Wring everything out of it. So I think the sprint race is short enough that you'll get riders approaching it the 2 different ways. Like someone will go and like Pecco did in his simulation and do some amazing lap times and like qualifying. And then he's used so much tyre that the times drop off. And hopefully he's hoping a big enough gap that the guys can't come back. But then you see someone like Bezzecchi's, his one was beautiful, consistent times. Not as fast in the beginning, but all the way to the end the same. And his times will come back because they were 6/10 faster at the end of the race. So I think there's the 2 different approaches that we're going to see, and I really don't know, but I think that's what we're going to see. It'd be super interesting to see who does what, because I think some will change since the test.
That's the thing. It's going to be fascinating to watch. And you mentioned about the fitness side for riders as well. Pol Espargaro was speaking ahead of the season that he comes into this year as heavy as he's ever been, because his muscle mass is so much greater to give him the strength to be able to wrestle that bike around 4, 10, 11, 12 qualifying laps during MotoGP Sprint, which I thought was fascinating insight to understand how riders' fitness and physical preparation will change as a result of the new format. That's Sprint, all to look forward to. Don't forget, 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon here from Portimao. You don't want to miss the very first one. We were speaking about fitness then. One of the big stories coming into pre-season was the fitness of Marc Marquez, the 8-time world champion. Of course, now he says back at 100% fit, both mentally and physically. The big question, though, is, Simon, does he have the bike beneath him to be able to showcase the Marc Marquez of 2019 and years previous?
No, I really don't think so. I think we're going to see Marc make some amazing efforts, you know, and win. You know, he's absolutely brilliant. If the bike was ready, I think he's the danger man. I really think it's almost the old Marc back. And I think if the machine was there, my money would be on him for the championship this year.
Right.
But the machine isn't. At least it isn't at the moment. And it'll be super interesting to see how long Honda take to come back. Can they come back quick enough to help him fight for the championship? You know what I'm saying? The second 2/3, for example, or second half. But at the moment, we're not seeing that. And I think it's a sad situation, you know.
In pre-season testing, the final results showed him languishing outside of the top 10. Did that tell the full story, or was he sandbagging a little bit?
As I reported on from the circuit live, I believe Marc was holding back, not showing everything he can do, because the amount of times I watched everyone else riding out on brand new rears and he wasn't. He was using used rear tyres to do simulations and probably learnt more from it, but didn't show us how fast he is. And I believe we'll see something special from him when the time counts, but I don't believe that a rider can do it for 42 races. Make the machine do something that it shouldn't, and that's what he has to do at the moment. And as I've seen for riders over the last years, Fabio for one, that it gets too tough mentally at a certain stage, halfway through the season, to put your body on the line, do something special, race after race.
Mistakes will come. If he's having to ride over the limit on so many occasions, it's just normal to expect, and unfortunately it's not possible to continue without mistakes happening.
That's my feeling.
Another man that same sort of ethos, I guess, applies to from what we saw. The wait is finally over. MotoGP is back. Simon, thank you for your time. Enjoy the season. We'll see you for the next edition of Grand Prix Gear Up in just 7 days' time from Argentina. Enjoy the weekend. I know that we definitely will.